Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new, I am in the middle of decluttering my makeup collection for 2021. I always like to do this at the beginning of the year just to refresh my collection, pull out products I'm no longer using. That way I can pass them along to friends and family and catch them before they expire. And for me, I just no longer want a collection that's this big. I have too many eyeshadow palettes. I went through a phase a few years ago where I was just buying every palette, and I have cut back a lot in the past year or two, but my collection is obviously still too big. I love so many of these eyeshadow palettes, I really do, but practically I can't use all of them every year. So I counted, I have 137 palettes, so that means I need to declutter 45, which is a lot of palettes. I feel like it might be a little bit of a challenge for me, but I really just want to keep what I love, what I know I'll reach for over the next year. I've been enjoying more of a curated collection, and I know that I won't be adding that many palettes to my collection this year, so I'm just hoping to cut it down overall. So I actually thought it would be fun to do a giveaway for you guys. I don't like to give away used makeup on my channel, but I did purchase the Natasha Denona Glam Palette for one of you guys. I know it was sold out for a while and a lot of people have expressed interest in this palette, and it is one of my favorites. So I thought it'd be fun to give this away along with a few other products as well. I just wanted to say thank you for watching my videos and my declutter videos. I love filming these every year, but I'm glad that you guys still enjoy watching them. So I really appreciate your support and you taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. So I'll be giving this away with a few other products. It's open internationally. Anyone can enter. I'll put more information in the description box below, but you just have to be subscribed and leave a comment below with your favorite eyeshadow palette. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoy today's video. Let's jump into it and start decluttering. I don't want this video to be an hour long, so I'm going to try to go through them a little bit quickly. We'll see how that actually goes. But this one is the Violet Voss Holy Grail Fun Sized Palette. So this formula is good. It performs really well. The shadows are blendable, smooth, easy to work with. I do feel like I have this color story over and over in my collection. And as much as I like the formula, Violet Voss doesn't tend to be one of my go-to brands. So I am going to declutter this one. I do have two of the Too Faced Tutti Frutti palettes. I actually really like these. This one is the Sparkling Pineapple palette, and it is a mainly neutral palette with a few pops of color. Again, I feel like I have these colors in a lot of palettes, and while I enjoyed this one, and I feel like I used it a pretty good amount, I think it is time to finally declutter it. It's just not one that I've really reached for over the past year. This one is the Razzle Dazzle Berry eyeshadow palette. I think out of the two, I liked this one a little bit better. I know that some people have been able to find this collection at their TJ Maxx, so if you're still interested in trying it out, you might be able to get it for a discounted price at your TJ Maxx. My stores never seem to have anything good. Every time I go in there, the makeup section is just completely bare, so I don't know for sure. I did enjoy this one. I think the colors are beautiful, but berry tones are one of my favorites. So again, I know I can duplicate these shades with other palettes I'll probably end up keeping just because I like some other formulas a little bit better. But I did enjoy these. I still think they perform well. I need to cut down my collection a little bit. These were the ColourPop Bretman Rock palettes. I'm tempted to keep these. So these aren't around anymore. This one is the Wet palette. Okay, I think I'll keep the Wet palette because these blues are so gorgeous. I still think that this is like one of their better collabs, and I think he did a really good job with it because he did a blue palette, like a cooler toned palette, and then also a red warm toned palette. As much as I like this one, I think again, there are other ColourPop palettes I'll probably end up keeping. So I think I can declutter Lit, but I do think I'll keep the Wet palette. I really like this shade. I like this shade. And of course the blues are gorgeous. So for now, let's hang on to the Wet palette. These three Juvia's Place palettes are a little bit newer to my collection. So I actually purchased the Taupes palette. This one is like a cooler toned neutral palette. What's interesting is these mini palettes don't feel the same as other Juvia's Place palettes. They perform well, but they're definitely softer. I think Juvia's Place is pretty well known for having really intense, vibrant shadows, but these you have to build up a little bit. I actually don't mind that because sometimes I do want a softer look, so I'm going to keep this one. And then I did get these two in the mail as PR from Ulta. They sent me a box with just products from different brands, so I didn't actually get them from Juvia's Place, but I do like them. This one is the Mauves palette, and this one actually looks pretty vibrant on the eyes. Even though it does take a good amount of building and blending to get there, I like how the look turns out. So I'm going to keep this one as well. The Chocolates palette is probably the most vibrant out of the three. It's obviously a deeper palette, but I don't feel like you have to work as much to build these up. And again, I do enjoy this one. All three of these are somewhat newer to my collection, so I'm just enjoying using them and creating some looks, so I'm going to keep this one too. This one is the Persona Cosmetics Identity palette. I've had this one in my collection for a while. I think they actually repackaged this, so now I think it comes in plastic packaging packaging, and the price tag actually went up too. But I still like this one. Mine's getting a little bit older, so I'm sure over the next year or two, it might expire. It's hard to know with palettes because sometimes they last a long time, sometimes they expire quickly. I still enjoy this one, especially when I'm just in like a neutral mood, when I don't want to do anything too bright and colorful, so I am going to keep this one. I have a good stack of ColourPop palettes right here. For some reason, it's hard for me to declutter ColourPop palettes. I think it's because a lot of them are palettes that I do love, but I tend to reach for these 9 pans over the 12 pans. So I might end up decluttering more of these than the 9 pans. This one is the ColourPop Pretty Guardian palette. It is their Sailor Moon collaboration. I actually think that this is a lot of fun for spring and summer. I love the bright tones. This one is still available on their website. I know when it was initially released, it sold out and then they restocked it. That kind of happens with a lot of their collabs, but if you're still interested in buying it, you can still grab it. I am definitely going to keep this one. I think it's really pretty for the spring and summer. This one is the Menage palette. This one was part of their holiday collection for 2019, and this one is really pretty. If you like pink eyeshadow, this one is a great option. It's a little bit softer. It has a few neutrals. I think I've used it maybe once, and it does perform well, but because it's brand new and it's not something I feel like I have to have, I think I'm going to declutter it. That way someone can enjoy basically a new palette. I don't know if it's still available. I know it was on Ulta's website for a while and it was super discounted. So if it is, I'll link it below. I'll try to link, I don't know if I'll be able to link all of these. I'll try to link as many as I can. I don't know if they'll all fit in the description box, but I'll include at least names and price info and some links. So if you do want to try any of them, you can just check the description box. This one is the Dream Street palette. It was a collaboration between ColourPop and Kathleen Lights. I did a video recently where I was talking about discontinued eyeshadow palettes I wish brands would bring back. And I actually did part 2 because a lot of you guys left comments with palettes you wish brands would bring back. And this was like one of the top comments. I do like this palette. I think it performs well. Urban Decay recently released the Naked Wild West palette and they're almost identical dupes. There are a few differences between the two, and as much as I did enjoy this one, I haven't reached for it in probably a year because I do have these colors in other palettes, especially now that I have Naked Wild West. So I know that this is a fan favorite for so many people, but I just don't think I need to keep it in my collection any longer. It's not something I've been using, and I do feel like it's getting a little bit older. I haven't used it in a while, so I can't say if the formula is actually good or bad. I just know it's not something I've reached for a while, so I am going to let it go. The ColourPop All That palette is one of my favorite like pink toned palettes they've done. They do have a ton of pink toned eyeshadow palettes, but I like this one because it does have the softer shades and then it has a few red tones as well. So I think it's very easy to work with. You can get quite a few looks, even though a lot of the shades look similar. I do find that when I use this, I can create probably like 5 or 6 very distinct looks. So I am going to keep this one. This one is the Bye Bye Birdie palette. I do like this one. I think it's still available on ColourPop's website. I like it because it does have some softer pinks, some brighter purples. I am going to keep this one. It's not one that I reach for all the time, but again, I do like using it on occasion. So I think I'll hang on to this for at least another year. This one is the ColourPop Raw Beauty Christie at Foresight palette. This is definitely one of the best palettes they've done. Christie did such a good job with the color story, but the formula just feels better than a lot of their other releases. So I don't know if they put extra effort into perfecting the formula or, you know, what happened with this one, but it does perform so beautifully. The colors are vibrant and intense, and it's just one of the best ones they've done. So if you can still get your hands on this, I do recommend it. I think every time they restock it, it seems to go out of stock again because people really want it. But I just enjoy this one so much. This one is the ColourPop Whatever palette. I do like this one. I don't know why I always forget about this one, but I did break it out during the fall season and it has so many pretty colors in it. I love the golden tones, the bronzy shades. There are some pretty pinks. So this is one that I'm going to hang on to as well. I am going to declutter the Wild Nothing palette. This one is just so light, and I think the collection as a whole was very, very lackluster. I do have a lighter skin tone, but even on me, I feel like I have to really build these shades up. Now, I do tend to prefer more vibrant shades overall, so if you do have a lighter skin tone and you like something that's pretty natural, you might enjoy this palette, but I just don't really get any use out of it. I feel like I have other neutral palettes from ColourPop that are a lot better than this one, so I am going to declutter this one. This one is the Good Sport palette. This one is no longer available. This is one of the palettes that I did mention as an eyeshadow palette I wish brands would bring back because the formula is really good and the color story is just interesting. I haven't seen anything like this from ColourPop since they did this one. It has such a mix, so you do get neutrals and colorful shades, warm tones and cool tones, but you can do so much with just this one palette. So I'm definitely going to keep this one. I think I'm going to finally let these two go. I don't think either one of these is available anymore. This one is the Double Entendre palette. Actually, I do think that this one is available, but they repackaged it. I think that this one is a better alternative to Wild Nothing. It is a neutral palette, but you do get a few deeper shades, so you can build it up and get more variation overall. This was one of their first palettes, so there are no pressed glitters. There aren't even matte shadows with shimmer mixed in. There are just true metallics and mattes in here, and I do enjoy this. I still reach for it on occasion, especially for these lighter tones. But again, I have other ColourPop palettes in like the 9-pan format that I reach for more as my go-to staple neutrals, so I am going to declutter this one. Same with I Think I Love You. This was one of my top ColourPop palettes, and I was so mad when they discontinued it because I do enjoy it and I just wanted other people to be able to get their hands on it. I thought this palette had just such a good balance because you get 4 matte shadows, like a light one, a black one, and then 2 browns, and then a bunch of metallics. So I just felt like it was the perfect everyday neutral palette because I could do, you know, my basic building with the matte shadows and then go in with any metallic. But again, there are other ColourPop palettes that I like a little bit better at this point. So I'm sad to declutter it because I really did love it, but I haven't really used it a whole lot over the past year. This one is the Give It To Me Straight palette. They don't have this one any longer, but again, this was one of my first original favorites because I was so into berry toned eyeshadow, and I do still like berries. I don't wear them quite as much, but I like this one because it has a good balance between neutrals and berry tones. I think I'll keep this one. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think I'm on the fence because I do like it. I just don't know that I've worn it a ton over the past year. I'm going to put this one in a maybe pile. I don't usually have a lot of maybes, but we'll put it in a maybe pile and I'll see where I'm at the end of the video. This is the Scarlet Dusk palette. This one has a ton of gorgeous, vibrant tones in it. I do like this formula a lot. I don't wear like this middle row as often, but I do think it could be fun to play with those shades. I like the right side of the palette a little bit more. It is a gorgeous palette, a great formula. I am going to keep this one. This one is the Catrice Self-Made Bae palette. I actually kept this one because I wanted to rank my palettes from 2020, and this was my worst palette of 2020. I like Catrice a lot. They make a lot of really good products, but their eyeshadow formula just doesn't typically do it for me. This palette is very lackluster. You have to work so hard to build the shades up, which would be fine, but they don't stay in place. They fade so quickly throughout the day. So in my opinion, it's just not a great formula. It wasn't something that I liked, so I am going to declutter this one. My Natasha Denona palettes were propping up my microphone, so I'm not going to declutter any of these. These are some of my favorites. I love all of them, but I'll show you them just in case you're interested. This one is the Love palette. It has a bunch of really pretty pinks and purples, and I love using this one. I'm also going to keep this one. This one is called Sunrise. This is a really gorgeous warm toned palette. It's my most colorful Natasha Denona palette, so I do love this one when I'm in the mood to wear some color. One of my favorite palettes of all time, I think it's my #1 palette of all time, is the Bronze palette. This one just has a bunch of warm tones in it. The metallics in here are so gorgeous. I wear this palette more than any other palette in my collection. It is my #1 go-to, so I'm definitely keeping this one. And then this one is the Glam palette. This is the one that I'm giving away in today's video, obviously a new version of it, but this one is great if you love cool tones. If you don't like to do anything too colorful or intense with your eye makeup, this one is perfect. So I'm definitely going to hang on to all 4 of these. This one is the Tarte Clay Play Shaping Palette. I actually really enjoy this palette. It looks like a very simple, basic, neutral palette, and it really is, but I have gotten a lot of use out of this over the years. I actually used it a good amount in 2020. Mine's pretty dusty because I do use it fairly often. But again, I think I'm going to declutter this one. It's getting pretty old and some of the shadows just feel dried out. This darker gray toned brown and this like deep brown, almost black shade just don't perform like they used to. And there are some shadows in here that work well, but I do have quite a few neutral palettes, so I think it is time to part with this one. I am going to keep the ColourPop Disney Misunderstood palette. This is like one of my absolute favorite ColourPop palettes that they've done. I know I say that about a lot of them, but this is really one that I think is so underrated. It's just so beautiful and vibrant, fun to work with. So I'm definitely going to keep this one. And I think I will declutter this one. This one is the ColourPop Golden State of Mind palette. This was actually their Sephora exclusive palette. ColourPop was at Sephora for like one holiday season, and mine, it just doesn't perform like it used to. It's getting pretty old. I feel like these shadows have dried out quite a bit, which isn't the case for a lot of my ColourPop palettes, but this is probably one of the oldest ones that I do do have. And because it is a completely shimmer palette, that's probably why I've noticed that the shimmers just don't perform as well. I actually really liked this palette. I like the idea of a full shimmer palette. I feel like a lot of brands won't commit to that because a lot of people do like their matte shadows, but I enjoyed having this one in my collection. It is just time to declutter it. Okay, these three palettes have my ColourPop single shadows. When ColourPop first came out with their eyeshadow formula, I purchased a ton of their singles and I got a lot of use out of them. I really did, but I'm just not someone who really likes single shadows. I feel like I keep trying to get into them because people keep telling me to get into them, but when it comes down to it, I just don't use them as much. I might use like the ColourPop Super Shocks. I kind of want to try some indie shimmer shadows, but as far as these go, I haven't really reached for them in the past year. And even before that, I wasn't using them super regularly. So it's time to part with these. I think you just need to know what works best for you and your collection. And even though a lot of people say, like, you should get into single shadows are great. They really are. And it is a nice way to try a formula or add like one specific color to your collection. But if you're not going to reach for it, it just doesn't make sense to have it in your collection. I did use this palette a little bit during 2020 just because it has staple neutrals. But again, with the amount of eyeshadow that I have, I feel like I can duplicate pretty much all of these shades within different palettes. I don't have any super unique singles in my collection. That might change in 2021 if I do try some like indie shimmers, but for now, I'm going to declutter these three palettes. I feel like I'm doing pretty good so far. So down here in the front, I have my Urban Decay Naked palettes. I don't think I'm going to be decluttering any of these, but let me just go through them. This one is Naked Honey. This one has a bunch of really beautiful golden toned neutrals. I love this one. I think it's my favorite Naked palette, so I am going to keep this one. Naked Heat is one of my go-to when I do want a little bit more of like an orangey red toned look. I feel like that's not a look that I go for a lot these days, but typically during the summer, I will kind of reach for this one a little bit more, so I'm going to keep this one too. I still love Naked Cherry. Again, I've moved away from berry tones a little bit, but this one just makes berry tones so easy because the shadows are very blendable. This one truly is like a very monochromatic palette, so I feel like you can go into any shadow and get kind of just like a look that flows together well, so it really is an effortless palette to use. I know not everyone loves Naked Ultraviolet, but I like this one a lot. I think the purples are pretty. I like that it is like a warm toned neutral and cool toned purple palette. That's not something I have in any other palette, and it helps me to be a little bit more creative when I'm creating looks because I can pull in all of the shades, and I've used this one quite a bit. I still love it, so I'm going to keep this one too. And then my newest Naked palette is Naked Wild West. I feel like this one could become my new favorite. After Naked Honey, this one definitely comes in second place. I enjoy this one so much. You can definitely get really vibrant looks or something slightly more toned down, but this one flows so well together. I haven't been able to stop using it since I got it, so I'm definitely going to keep this one too. This one is the KKW Beauty Classic Blossom palette. I love this palette. I actually recently purchased a new KKW palette. They have a new neutral one. I think it's just like their classic volume 2 at Ulta, and I decided to pick it up because I do enjoy this formula so much. I had a gift card, so I don't know that I would have paid full price for it otherwise because they are $45. This one was on sale during Ulta's 21 Days of Beauty last year, but I do like it. I reach for this one a ton. It's just very easy to work with. So I'm going to keep this one. I am going to declutter the Buxom White Russian palette. I obviously haven't filmed my ranking for 2021, but this palette will be toward the bottom for sure. And I was going to hang on to it for that video, but what's the point? I can just include a picture when I do film it. There might be someone in my life who enjoys this, so I'd rather pass it along while it's fairly new. The thing about this palette is that it's so lackluster. Like, it's very, very subtle on the eyes. I know some people don't like a ton of pigment, but this one, it doesn't even show up very well at all. It takes a lot of building. It's not very blendable. The metallic shadows are dry and the blushes are dry. Like, this doesn't feel like their regular blush formula. So for me, this palette was a fail. I just don't think it's that great. I actually think it's really bad. So I am going to declutter this one. I am going to keep the e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette. I don't know if they discontinued this. They came out with it, was it last summer? And I love this. I think it's one of their best palettes that they've ever done. And I was going to talk about it in a recent video, but I checked and it's been out of stock on their website. So I hope they end up restocking it because this collection as a whole was really good. e.l.f. tends to release limited edition collections and then they don't always restock them. If this one does come back in stock, I still recommend it. It's just such a fun palette and I especially love to use it during the summertime. I do think I will declutter Opposites Attract. I like this palette, but I think they've come a long way with their formula. They've improved it quite a bit. This one is not a super old release, but even since they came out with Retro Paradise, I feel like their formulas tend to get better and better. So I just feel like I don't need to keep this one. It's not something I reach for very often these days. I think I will declutter new classics as well. Ever since they released the bite-sized eyeshadow palettes, I don't typically reach for these two. I feel like a lot of these colors can be found in their bite-sized palettes, and I'll probably keep the majority of those, so I will declutter this one in the meantime. I am going to keep the Tiny Marvels palette. This one is a Mel Thompson collab. She did it with Sydney Grace, and this formula is gorgeous. I would love to try more Sydney Grace eyeshadows this year. The color story is so interesting. It's not like anything that I have, but I feel like with this palette, you can create so many different looks. So if you can still get your hands on this, I do recommend it. I know it sells out very quickly when they do restock it, but that's because it really is a good palette. This one is the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. I am going to keep this one. I said when this palette was initially released, I knew that it would go on sale at some point, and it has been on sale at a few retailers for 50% off. So if you wanted this, but you didn't want to pay the full $54, I think you can still get it for $27. So I'll link it below if I can find it for a discounted price, but I still love this one. I use it as a complimentary palette all the time because the shimmers are so pretty all over the lid. So I do have a few palettes from Mel Cosmetics. I love the palettes that I do have. This one is the Muerte palette, which I know is no longer available, which is so sad because this is one of the most unique palettes that I have. I love the darker colors mixed with the mint tones and the reds, so I'm definitely going to keep this one. I actually need to use this more because it is such a gorgeous palette. This one is the Smoke Sessions palette. I find that out of the three that I own, this one has the most inconsistencies, and it's not even super inconsistent. There are maybe just like one or two shadows that are a little bit harder to blend out. This one was difficult to work with, but once I kind of like worked my way through the top layer, it was fine. I still love this. I think that it is a gorgeous option, so I'm going to keep this one. I got the She's in Parties palette kind of near the end of last year. I think I got it during a Sephora VIB sale, and this one is so pretty, especially if you love purple tones. You can get something a little bit lighter or something a little bit deeper, so I'm going to keep this one too. So I do have a few different Too Faced palettes. It is time to part with my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. When I did my declutter video last year, I told you guys I was going to keep it for one more year and enjoy it, but mine is definitely getting old, and I think that it has expired at this point. The shadows just don't perform like they used to. There are some good shadows in here that still work well, but for the most part, I can tell it's just getting old. I really liked this palette. I really liked my chocolate bar palettes, and I did end up decluttering those either last year or the year before, but at this point, I do feel like I can kind of duplicate a lot of these shades with other palettes in my collection. So as much as I enjoyed it, I don't know that I'll miss it too much at this point, but I did love using it when I had it. This one is the Too Faced Gingerbread Spice palette. It's funny because they came out with the, what was it called? Like the Too Faced Extra Spicy Gingerbread palette for the holiday season last year, and a lot of you guys said that's actually one of your favorites. I didn't buy it because I felt like I had a lot of similar shades in this palette, but I don't think I reached for this palette once in 2020. So because of that, that is a sign that I need to let it go. I do enjoy it. I think the colors are great, but I have too many palettes, and if I don't reach for one at all during the year, it means it's time to declutter it. This one is the Too Faced Chocolate Gold palette. This one is so bulky. Have I reached for this one too? I don't think I have. This was one of my favorite palettes because they did such a good job with the metallic formula, and I felt like a lot of brands weren't doing this many metallics in a palette, and I've always just enjoyed metallic shadows as a whole. So I have loved this one. I'm so tempted to keep it because I feel like I have good memories about it, but I'm just not a super nostalgic person, so I don't know why I'm feeling like that. I guess I shouldn't say that. I just don't usually keep things for sentimental reasons, at least not makeup. That's not something I usually do. So I don't know why I'm letting this one pull me in. I think I'm going to declutter it. I have a lot of good metallics in my collection. I don't think I reached for this at all over the past year. So yeah, that's definitely a sign that I need to declutter it if I haven't used it at all in a full year. What are the chances I'll use it in 2021? I was not expecting to declutter all of my Too Faced palettes. The last one that I'll do for now is this one. It is the Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes palette. I actually really like this one. When we were traveling, this is one that I brought with me. The last trip that Brady and I took to New York City was like last February, and I brought this one with me, and I felt like it was perfect because I could create simple looks or do something more dramatic when we were going out at night, and I just love this formula. So I am going to hang on to this one. I like the formula in the other palettes I just decluttered from Too Faced, but I just don't use them as much. This is one that I do find myself reaching for. Okay, I'm going to cut the video off right here. I'll be back with part 2 in a few days. I'm not trying to leave you guys hanging on like a cliffhanger. The video's getting long. I know some people would sit through an hour-long declutter, but according to my analytics, most people won't watch for more than 15 minutes. So I just want to make the video like an actual watchable length. But I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of my declutter. If you want to watch other declutter videos in the meantime, I'll link some in the description box below, but I'll see you guys very soon with part 2.